Welcome to Vino with Vito. Let's not forget Nina.
Hi.
And today we have Al Scazafabo back, our favorite divorce attorney, the one we're never going to use, hopefully, and I hope we never use you. But we have Al back. A lot of people saw the last episode, Al, and have questions.
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions.
Some we can't read.
I have them here.
Air,
Some we can't read, but the ones we can read, I'm going to put up here. And also, look what Al bought, Nina. Bottle Camus. Look at that. Huh?
Thank you, Al.
Al, we're going to open this and we're going to enjoy this bottle of Camus here. And also, look at this cool thing from Robert Graham, a wine holder.
Only you.
What do you think, huh?
Very nice.
It matches
It is
my
pretty
shirt, huh? I love that. I love that.
That's pretty cool.
But so Al, what'd you think of the last episode we had?
I thought it was very informative. If you look at the whole episode, right? We had some funny stories, but we also had some informative, and from that you could extrapolate some good information and what people
What does
go
that
through.
mean, Vito? What does that word mean?
I had asked Al earlier, before we started, please, with the big words, because again, I got asked Nina again for the big words that you, Nina, what does it
I
mean?
don't know what that one means.
But I did get a lot of people, reaching out to me saying I saw this, where I saw it in the reels and everything, and they were asking me if I was going to do it again, and then serendipitously,
because a lot of
fortuitously, you had contacted me and said, "Come on back."
A
Because
lot of people said, I wish we knew that you guys were having him on. I would have asked the question, had you asked a question for me? Because a lot of people don't want to ask questions like live, when they have people that do it live because they don't want their faces or their names, but we have some anonymous.
And I think, to be fair, right, the viewer should know that I haven't seen the questions. I don't know what they are. So we're going to have some fun with it, I guess, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Grazie.
Wine. Nina,
Thank
Salute.
you.
some wine to you. And guys,
Salute.
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 Cheers.
Taste this Camus.
Very nice. Very nice.
Not bad. Not bad.
Not bad at
bad
all.
at all.
Not bad at all. So Al, what do you think? Should we start with the questions? Do you want to say anything before we start with the questions? I know last time you gave us a couple of funny stories. Hopefully, with these questions people are asking today, maybe
It'll prompt another one.
it'll prompt another story here.
I guess we could start with the questions, Vito.
I have one real quick that someone just texted me. It's from Anna in Fairfield. And she, that's his wife's name. She wants to know, out of the 100 homes you sold last year, does she get 50%? Does she get to pick the 50 homes that she gets the commission from?
I'd have to run a conflict check on that, and I think I
just
would be.
kidding.
I'll give you the names of 3 other attorneys that you can.
That's a good one, Nina. That's a good one. I got a question from Phil here, too. Hold on.
How do I get Nina out of my house?
So Alex asks, can I request custody of the Netflix password?
Yes, but look, we're being facetious, but obviously you would just change your something like Netflix. But it's an interesting question because it does prompt. So there's oftentimes fights over account passwords. You can imagine now in this day and age, there's a password for everything. So bank accounts, to pay the bill. Sometimes people will actually try to mess with the other person, and they'll change the passwords. And we have, so like for instance, college tuition now, it's not like the old days. Everything is paid with an online account.
Oh, yeah. I just did my son Ralphie's.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so I've had cases where there have been arguments over this because both parties are trying to pay. So it'll be where it's split. And Nina, you're paying your share, and Vito, you're paying your share, and you go on, and one of you invariably changes the password and doesn't give it to the other side, and then says, "Oh, they're not paying," and But ultimately, I wouldn't call it custody of the Netflix password, and in Netflix, I would just say set up your own account.
But if I hire you as my attorney, I wouldn't have to pay anything, right?
No, you'd get free Netflix for life. No, what I would say, and this is what we were talked about this last time, the way I practice, a lot of attorneys will say, I'll file a motion. You want me to file a motion? Sure. It's going to cost you money. I would say to the client, we're not going to worry about your Netflix password because you're not going to spend $400, $500 an hour to argue over a Netflix password.
Now, in New Jersey, is it automatically 50%?
What do you mean?
Like, I thought the state of New Jersey, if
No,
you get divorced.
not to interrupt you. I know what you mean. So it's not, New Jersey's not a community property state. So it's an equitable distribution state. There's a lot of states like that. I think Pennsylvania's equitable distribution, New York. California, for instance,
Yes, I knew that
is
California was
a
the-
community property.
Yeah.
That's why when you see celebrities, it's basically what that means is anything from the date of the marriage through the date of the complaint that was acquired, any property or asset, stocks, real property, will be divided exactly 50-50. In New Jersey, we call it equitable distribution, which means there are in the statute, there are a number of factors, like 14 different factors that the court would apply to determine the equities in the asset and to distribute it. Now, for settlement purposes, the truth is most things, if we had a pizza, we would say, oh, and I bought the pizza and you went and picked it up, and at the end we didn't eat it all, and there was 4 pieces left, you'd say, Al, you take 2, I'll take 2. It's because that's how you're going to settle a case. So oftentimes, most things are settled 50-50, especially at the marital home, right? But I will tell you that businesses, for instance, often come up in the equation, right? A lot of people I represent have businesses. And so from a business standpoint, there are certain arguments that are made where it's typically not 50-50, even for settlement purposes. It's something less than that. So, it's sort of the blood, sweat, and
What
tears
about
on it.
inherited money?
Inherited money is, generally speaking, exempt.
Right, you don't have to split that.
However, there are exceptions. So if you inherit money and you then use the money to fund the marriage, or you put it into improvements on your house, or you put it into a joint bank account, you could erode or destroy the exemption.
Okay.
Additionally, if you kept it separate and you held it there, there's a case called Miller, which we call it Millerizing. So depending on the inheritance, and I've done this in cases where the other attorney says, well, it's exempt. I say, yes, it's exempt, but your client just inherited $1 million. So if I take the $1 million and I value that and determine what a reasonable yield is for reasonable investment purposes, I have to then use that passive income from that to offset the needs in the alimony. So yes, it's exempt, but it's not ignored.
Wow. This is some pretty good
Sorry.
information.
That's a
Interrupted you.
that's a very nuanced,
No,
detailed.
no.
So the general answer is yes, it's exempt, but you can get into situations where you lose the exemption if you've used it for the
Right.
marriage, for the marital enterprise, and furthermore, it's not just it's there, it's exempt, so therefore you got to pretend it doesn't exist. It exists because if you've just inherited $10 million. My client makes $150,000 a year. Why should he be paying or she be paying alimony to you? Because the idea of alimony is to live a lifestyle reasonably comparable to the marriage, and there's 14 factors under the statute. You look at the standard of living, you look at the needs of the supported spouse. But if you just inherited a bundle of money, right? Now the application of those factors are much different.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, so now we got Mia. Mia asks, what's the most creative reason someone cited for wanting a divorce?
Wanting or waiting for?
Wanting a divorce. What was the most creative reason they came up and say they wanted a divorce? I'm telling you, these people are coming out with some questions.
Well, I don't know if I could characterize any of them as creative, but look, oftentimes you will hear, I've heard stories with clients who've come to me and said that they haven't had intimate relations with the other spouse, and then they'll say, for 7 years. And you're looking at them, and you say 7 years, and that's why they want a divorce. And you wonder why they didn't want it in year 3 or year 2, or year 1.
Very patient.
But they now all of a sudden in year 7 they want it. I've heard people. I had one client come to me and he wanted a divorce because the two of them wanted a divorce, and they thought that somehow they had figured out some kind of tax benefit to them by getting a divorce but staying together.
Oh.
Yes, and similar to that, it was it was a sad story. The woman was terminally ill, and the husband had done some research, and he had come to me, and he wanted to get a divorce from her because he believed that if he got a divorce from her, she would be able to avail herself of different benefits medically that because of his income, she couldn't avail herself of. And it was, and I looked at him and I said, well, you have to certify that there is irreconcilable differences, that if you're telling me this, I cannot suborn perjury, I can't commit a fraud. And that's what he was. The truth, and in fairness, that fellow was an older fella, and he was desperate, and he was watching his wife deteriorate, and he was looking for anything he could to provide her with better care. So,
better health care.
But I gave him an honest answer, and he appreciated that. And
that's sweet. I mean, it's sad, but
it's
sweet
sad, but yeah. So those are some, those are. I don't know if there's a creative reason for it.
But then you got other people that never get married.
Yes, because of that. They say that. Yep.
They say don't get married. You have kids, and guess what?
You can have a palimony action though. So palimony is, you remember Lee Marvin, right? The actor Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin was probably the seminal palimony case. Now that was in California, but other places have followed. And palimony is an equitable action. It's not alimony with a P. It's called palimony. It's an actual equitable action. It's venued in the family division in New Jersey, and it's a implied contractual claim that the two parties are together. They never got married, but the other person promised to support them for life. And oftentimes you'll see it where, one of the children is 16 years old and the parties have been together 17 years and they've lived in the house for 17 years. Now, interestingly, a couple years ago, I want to say it was 2014, might have been a little after that, but they changed the statute. New Jersey legislators now require under the statute of frauds that you have a writing, sort of an actual contract. It's no longer an implied contract, but lawyers are creative in coming up with ways to create the writing, right? So if you're on a mortgage or a deed, or there's other materials where you wrote to the person in a love letter and said, I promise I will support you forever. I know you want to get married, but it's best that we don't get married, but doesn't matter, we're going to act as if we are married. Well, that might satisfy under the writing requirement under the statute of frauds. But yes, you can bring an action for unmarried people as a palimony action.
That's crazy, because you do see a lot of people today too. They're not married.
Mm-hmm.
They have kids,
or pets,
or one of the questions.
Yeah, I want to know that too. Like if
one of the questions here is, here I'll tell you right now.
How do you divide the pet?
Hold on. Who asked that question? Tiffany asked, who gets the dog?
So that's an interesting question. There's actually some lawyers that that they hold themselves out as being experts in the pet custody area. But the truth is there are a lot of cases like that. I've seen people spend tens of thousands of dollars over a 12-year-old dog. Yes, and it's mind-boggling.
You don't get it.
Do you
I
love
would
dogs
do it.
that much?
Yes.
It's mind-boggling. But you can create.
You don't get it.
You can create. Dogs are property, so they're not treated as humans. So the word custody is interesting.
I think they're humans.
But we do apply sort of a parenting schedule or a custody schedule to them, and ultimately, typically, one person doesn't. I've not seen where. I shouldn't say that. I have seen where both people care, but most of the time, one person cares just a little bit more,
yeah.
And the other person will use that as leverage and say, "Oh, you want the dog? I want the dog." And then eventually, the person will say, "You know what? You want the dog so bad, that's fine, but I want the Verizon stock, something like that."
I'll give him the score.
But we can, and I have created parenting or custody agreements for the pet. Yes.
I have a question. So if someone's getting divorced and there's like the sole breadwinner, the other person's maybe not working at all,
correct,
and the breadwinner wants to get divorced, I heard that the person who makes the money has to pay for the other the spouse's attorney to get divorced. Is that true?
So that's a very popular question, and the answer is
I
not.
thought it was unique.
No, it's no. I mean, the clients always ask that, and there are provisions in the law, and there are arguments to be made for the advance of legal fees. Generally, though, the judges will look at. I mean, if the other spouse is uber wealthy, but not. You have to look at the fact pattern, right? So if it's a person who's making $200,000, they're making a nice living, and the other person's a stay-at-home parent. Okay, they're making the court's not going to make them advance. They might make them advance the retainer, the initial retainer, but they'll do it without prejudice, subject to final allocation, which means then when the case is over, they might get a credit for that. Typically what they will do is if they have large enough assets, the court will create a litigation fund and say, like, look, if you have $1 million in an account someplace, the court might say, we're going to take $100,000 for litigation fees, 50 to this attorney and 50 to that attorney. At the end of the case, though, depending on how the trajectory of the case, if somebody is very contemptuous throughout the entire case or have caused problems in multiple motions, we always ask for counsel fees for that motion. So if I have to file a motion because you're not doing what you're supposed to do, certainly we argue and ask for counsel fees. Judges typically, though, will be reluctant to do it on a motion, and they will punt it to the end of the case, and then you're sitting at the drafting table and you're saying, we want X amount of dollars towards counsel fees, because counsel fees is an ultimate issue in the case, and you can have them awarded. But, and typically you'll resolve them.
And if the other person just doesn't want to get divorced, can they just drag things out for, like, how long can
they can by being recalcitrant and and not being not participating in and dragging their feet. But ultimately what happens is the court says, look, if you didn't respond to the discovery requests, and ultimately if you are not participating in whether there's a court appointment or a court scheduled event, you'll get what's called a default. You'll file a motion or if they never even file an answer or notice of appearance, you'll file a motion requesting a default. Then the court will enter default like you would in a regular civil case.
So I'm sure that happens a lot, right? The other person doesn't want to get divorced and they just ignore everything?
Yeah, and yes.
I actually had somebody selling the house and he didn't want to get divorced, and he kept pushing, but at the end, I guess, go ahead, finish, Al. I'm sorry.
No, that's right? That happens all the time. Yeah, but most of the time, I think people then realize the train has left the station, and what I find is then they try to scramble to then participate once they realize that this is happening. I think people do that because they think, okay, maybe he'll change his mind. Maybe she'll change her mind.
Or just to be spiteful.
And when they and sometimes they do it to be spiteful, but then they realize they're hurting themselves. So you're not spiting anyone but yourself if you don't participate. Because then at the end, years ago they called it a notice of equitable distribution. Now we call it a notice of proposed final judgment. And ultimately, if it's not wildly unreasonable, in a one-sided manner, we submit a proposal to the court as to what alimony should be, what the distribution of assets should be, counsel fees. Every issue that's in the case, we will submit a proposal on how it should shake out. And typically, if it's within the standard of reason, court will grant the final proposed judgment of divorce. And you might have good arguments as to why it shouldn't be distributed a certain way. So, for instance, we were talking before about a business. Well, oftentimes you'll see businesses settle for 30% of the value, or 25% of the value, 35% of the value. But if you're doing a proposed judgment, and you say, okay, Vito, you have a business. We had the business valued over your objection, but we had it valued, and here's the value of it. You never got an opportunity to challenge that value, and oh, by the way, we want 50% of it. And the court might grant that, and you have no way to say, so you're really hurting yourself by not participating.
What if a business is owned by the spouse and, like, their family or somebody else? Like, does that still
So if you
roll
mean if
over
there's
to
other members or other partners within the
Yeah.
business, you value the
Then you just, like, divide it or buy them out, or-
Yeah, so the partner. I mean, it's a little more complicated than
Mm-hmm.
that, but certainly, you look at the value of the business and then how the business is structured and where this person falls within the business. Are they actually a partner? I mean, there are some family-owned businesses that they hire their family members as just regular W-2 employees.
Yeah.
So then they really don't have an interest.
It's just, the
yeah.
one person. Now, have you ever found either the husband or the wife having, separate accounts and trying to hide the accounts and monies and all that?
All the
And
time.
how do you,
All the
how
time.
do you guys find that?
It's difficult. That is a difficulty in these cases, because oftentimes where it happens is one spouse has never paid attention to the wheel, ever, from a financial standpoint. And especially now, years ago it was different when people went to the bank, physically went to the bank to cash
Right,
their
cash
check
the
and
check,
things.
put it in.
Now everything is virtual and online, and now you have Zelle and Venmo, and you have Bitcoin, which is a problem, right? Because people can put monies in these places that aren't producing paper statements coming to the house and things like that. I mean, years ago we would say, look, what's coming in the mail? Where do they bank?
Right.
So there are private investigators that actually do services. They can be relatively expensive for what they're doing, but I've seen them upwards of $1,500 or $2,000, and I don't know how effective they are, but they do stateside, national, and international banking and property searches to see if there's any banking activity. They have programs that they can do that to generate the search. Or you have to hone in on particular radius of the geographic location and where the person is historically banked, and then subpoena the banks. So so we routinely
I'm
send
gonna
subpoenas
go
out.
off divorce into death real quick. So if you die, right? So say if Phil dies, and I need to get into his phone for account reasons and all that stuff. If you don't have their password, they cannot get you into their phone, right? Or you don't know that?
Well,
I heard you have to sign something before that,
Well,
transfers everything from your phone over to.
I don't know. You're not planning on shooting Phil?
No,
right?
no.
Oh, all right.
I just used it as an example.
I just want
I
Phil.
don't-
She's not
so,
planning on it.
I don't know the answer to that, but I will say that just generally speaking, when somebody dies, you get the death certificate, and you open up the probate, and then you get what they call short certificates, which then basically gives you the authority to go into all accounts.
Right, but I
So
don't think it's phone.
It may be that you
If
would
you don't
have
have
to,
their phone password,
Yeah,
you
I don't-
cannot
I don't
get
think
into their
you
phone.
can
get into
Because
their
it
phone.
happened with, someone was in an accident, and she ended up passing away. But they were trying to get into her phone, even the police were trying to get into her phone to see if she was texting or what at the time of the accident, and because nobody had her password, they could not get into her phone.
well, it would be because let's say Verizon's the carrier. I imagine Verizon doesn't have the actual password
Yeah.
It's only like
unlock
But
the
it's-
phone.
isn't
It's
that
Apple
crazy?
or whatever,
That's-
and Apple won't give anybody the passwords. It doesn't matter. They said they won't do it. So
It just popped in my head.
yeah, no, I figured it popped in your head, and thank God you're not thinking about shooting Phil. But and Phil,
Just a
she
random question.
If you do, please don't tell me.
don't tell
No,
Al.
I learned
right?
that today.
Oh, okay.
Gotta figure out a
Attorney-client, that's an
different
interesting
way.
topic, attorney-client privilege.
Oh, yeah.
So, I can make it real simple. If you did shoot Phil, and you came into
Poor
my office,
Phil.
and you came into my office and told me that would be under the attorney-client privilege. If you came into my office and said you were going to, it would not be under the attorney-client privilege, and I would have
Really?
an obligation to report that. Yes.
That's interesting.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
So somebody's going to hear this today, and they're going to learn something.
They're
But
gonna
no,
learn
any
something. Don't tell your attorney you're thinking about
attorney-client
Phil.
privilege.
Just do it. Just do it.
by lay people, attorney-client privilege is often one of the most understood. They see it on television and everybody thinks, so you go to tell your attorney thing. It basically future crimes. Attorneys have an obligation. If you report to me that you're going to commit a crime, right? I have an obligation to prevent that. But if you told me about a crime you committed 20 years ago,
Yeah,
that
you don't
falls
have
under
to.
the, yes.
All right, so getting back to
We're
divorce.
gonna have more questions. We're gonna have more questions about that.
That'll
For
be
next time.
That'll be for next time. Will asked, I love these questions people are asking. Is there a Divorcee of the Year award I can apply for?
Not that I'm aware of.
Uh,
You can apply for you can nominate me for Divorce Lawyer of the Year, but I don't know if there's a Divorce of the Year.
these people are asking some funny questions. Adam asks, can I get a certificate of divorce completion to frame on my wall?
So the answer to that is yes. If the divorce is over, you get a divorce, your judgment of divorce, which comes with a gold seal from a raised gold seal from the court, signed by the judge, and that's a lot of people call it a divorce decree, because that's the old term, but it's a judgment of divorce. And you actually, when I get them for my clients, I tell them that's one of the documents. I say put this in a safe place because you need it for a lot of things. If you're selling property, for instance, you may have to do an affidavit of title, as you know.
Right.
And sometimes the title agencies will say, all right, we know it's not marital property, but you have to, in the affidavit, attest to the fact that it is not marital property. And oh, by the way, we'd like to see your judgment of divorce. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe somebody will frame it and actually will put it.
Well, now you see
we'll
all over
put it on
social
the
media,
wall.
like people go on like bachelorette parties, like after
Yeah, they
their
have divorce
divorce.
parties.
Yeah, it's a
Divorce
divorce
party.
party.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw a couple of those on social media, and then they're telling everybody they're getting divorced or whatever, and then a week
Just to get the
later,
party.
to have a party, I guess, and then a week later they're back together.
See, that's when the certificate would come in handy.
See,
If you don't have your certificate,
there
you can't go on your new
You
party.
can't go
You
on.
can't go on your
Can't go on your
vacation.
party.
I think I actually saw an advertisement one time down in Atlantic City where, because they have, Atlantic City has party organizers for bachelorette and bachelor parties. They set up the limousine, they set up the itinerary, and they actually advertised for divorce
For
parties.
divorce parties. That's insane. The other thing I noticed too with people, they're thinking about getting a divorce or whatever, and they're not telling their spouse, "Hey, we're going to get a divorce," but they can actually go and purchase a home without the spouse's signature on there and purchase it themselves, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, sure.
And say that they're not married, or actually, I'm sorry, say they are married, but they're buying it, on their own without their spouse's knowledge.
So I've had that, and it's not. I don't recommend it. In other words, I had a case last year. As a matter of fact, the fellow had a lot of money, and he said, I'm living in an apartment. I can't wait for this divorce to get over. I'm buying a house. So, but he's buying it, quote unquote, during the marriage. So it's
right.
acquired during the marriage, and he was buying it. So as far as the seller was concerned, it didn't matter, and he got the mortgage in his name and everything. But then I had to make sure that the other side was well apprised of it, and that we had at least in writing, a consent that anything that he was purchasing would not be subject to equitable distribution.
Okay.
What if he told you after he purchased it?
That happens too. And then I have to do the same thing, only
Oh.
after the fact, and ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Okay. Now, what about if, say, the spouse doesn't want to forgive that? Are they entitled to half that property too?
Truly, technically, the argument would be that, no, you acquired it during the marriage.
Right.
Most judges would see through that and understand it. But I will tell you, the question then becomes, where did you get the money for it? So then
Because that money could have been split.
the secondary
Right.
question is
Down payment,
were
right.
marital monies for the down payment used? Which then you say if they were, but again, we go back to the inheritance question. In this particular case, the fella had inheritance that we already agreed was exempt. There was no challenge to this inheritance account that he had, and he took the money from that to purchase himself this new house where he was going to live post-divorce. So it was all on the up and up, and we did it that way. But again, if he was using marital monies for the down payment, the wife would be entitled to a credit for those down payment
To
monies.
those down payments.
But then
absolutely.
the next question is does it bridge over to she gets half the value? Now, as you know, though, most of the times there's no real value in the house. right? You acquired it because you just bought it.
You bought it, right.
So you put the down payment, it's mortgaged. There's not, it's usually about 20% equity, and you're getting the down payment, half the down payment anyway. So there's not equity there to split, is what I'm getting at. So but I usually tell clients, don't acquire a property until after we put ink on paper.
It's like when you're applying for a mortgage, don't go buy a new car. Don't go,
Don't buy a boat.
Don't buy a boat.
Don't buy a car.
Don't buy a car. And stuff like that. Yeah, I mean.
Even furniture, like a lot of furniture. You spend a lot of money on furniture.
Now, it's come with the furniture now. Everybody's got to, you got to figure out where the furniture's going, who's taking the furniture when you have.
That's personal property. I generally, and a lot of attorneys, I mean, yes, it's part of the job. We do it. I reluctantly do it. I tell clients it's best to try to work that out amongst yourselves. Years ago, we used to do what was called, we still do it, alternate pick, where, you pick, then I pick, you pick, then I pick, and then that's how you divide the stuff
like in gym class.
But most people don't want to pay their lawyers.
Just didn't want to be last.
Yes, right. Most people don't want to pay their lawyers to argue over the pots and the pans.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, have you ever had anybody that just came out and said, you know what, we're getting a divorce. We already figured out what we're doing.
All the time.
And everything is split already. We just need to hire you just to get the certificate so I can put on the wall.
And I will do that occasionally, depending on the client, if they're reasonable. But what I tell clients is, look, you still have to have an agreement, okay? It's, right? And I'm still going to give you advice. I cannot rubber stamp the agreement that you made. So if it turns out that husband makes $500,000 a year,
what I was trying to get at,
and you make zero, and you've waived alimony, I'm not rubber stamping that agreement. And you could bang your pound the table and say, but that's what I want. Then that's fine. Then you don't need me. And it would be foolish for me to take your money. All you have to do is go to court with the agreement, say we want to get a divorce, and the judge will divorce you.
Wow.
But I'm not doing that because it's fraught with peril for the attorney, because they're already coming in going against your advice. And and sometimes people go against your advice, and that's fine if it's within reason. And then you document, like, I've advised you to do this. You've said you don't want to do that. I understand for the reasons why you don't want to do it, but from a legal standpoint, I disagree with that. But knowing that this is the decision you're making, and I'll do those letters. But if somebody comes in and they say, we already have it, I'll split up already, and this is what we did. I won't take that case.
But do you get people that come in, like, say if they do that, they say, we already figured it out, we want it to be amicable, we're fine, and then they hire, say you, the spouse hires someone else, and then it gets really ugly. Do you ever get that, where it started out really
All the
nice,
time.
and then it gets
All the
really
time.
ugly?
All the time.
Now, is it because the attorney's telling them you're an idiot for signing that, or?
That's what I'm
And
saying.
again,
Sometimes.
Do you
we
know
don't
what
wanna
you
put
could
you
be
on the
getting?
spot.
Why
So-
aren't you agreeing to this?
Right.
You
I
could be
could give
getting a lot more.
you 20 different examples of how this comes up, from different. So people say, well, we want to go to mediation first. And I say, well, okay, but the mediator can't give you legal advice.
Is that extra? You have to pay for the mediator?
You have to pay for the mediator. They usually split the cost of the mediator. But
you got to pay for
But if you go to the mediator and the mediator says, okay, and everybody says, well, this is what I agree, but the mediator is not giving you legal advice. The mediator is neutral. Now you come to me, and and we've had this. You pick it apart, and you say, well, here's what, and they say, oh, I didn't know that I have a right to that. Yeah, had you consulted with me first, I would have told you that. Oh, well, I want that then. And then that's where, then the other side says, wait, you already agreed. And then where it comes up a lot, every single time, I actually chuckle on every phone call I have or consultation where somebody comes in and says, well, my spouse said that they don't want any part of my business. Okay. Or they're not gonna go after alimony. Okay, sure. No, I'm telling you, and I tell them, I say, look, I get it. You know your spouse better than I do, and you're convinced of this. I get it, but I've been doing this almost 25 years. Well over 1,000 different divorces, or even more than that. I've never seen a situation where somebody's come in and the other person said they're not going to go after the business, and then they don't. They always do.
They always go after
And it's always, she said she was not going to do it. He said he wasn't going to do it, and then they ultimately do. Because what happens is they go to an attorney, and the attorney says, well, okay, I understand that that's not what you want to do, but you still have to raise that issue, and then you could back off of it later. And then that, is the
okay.
tipping point for the beginning of acrimony.
Right, like start it, and if you decide it really isn't what you want to do, then you could always drop
then
it,
you
but
can
at least get
go
the ball
back.
rolling.
Have you ever had a person, and I'm reading some stuff here, have you ever had someone come in and say, hey, Al, I'm getting divorced, and it could be the husband or the wife, whoever made the most money, and say, I'm going to give him or her everything, all the money, I'm giving her the house, and, I'm going to keep something for me to just go and start all over again and just give away everything.
Yes.
And you, as an attorney, could recommend saying, hey, if that makes you happy, if that makes you, want to move on, then do it. Or would you recommend you're out of your friggin' mind? And
Well, so the answer is yes, right? I've had
Mhm.
that, and I've had that in different degrees, right? From different sides of it, too. So I had one fella, he was older. The wife was a very high up executive at a pharmaceutical company and made like $500,000 a year, and more, depending on bonuses and so forth. And this guy, all he wanted to do was he had an old pickup truck, and he wanted to go fishing. And he, did handy stuff around the house. He was basically, and he said, "That's all I want to do, and I only want to look." But he had other things that he was entitled to, or especially just at least from an argument standpoint. But the alimony, he only wanted a little bit of alimony. He wanted like 50% less alimony than he probably would have been awarded if the matter had gone to trial. He didn't want any of the stocks or anything like that. He just wanted this alimony for a period of time, and he wanted this. They had a house in Pennsylvania, like a cabin, and that's all he wanted. He wanted to go live there, and that was it. So of course I go through and I say, well, this is you're entitled to this, or we should be making an argument for this. This is what the picture might look like at final, at a trial. This is for settlement purposes. This is what you can reasonably take a position on. But you're knowing all that, you're basically like what doctors call informed consent, eyes wide open, right? I'm giving you all the information. If you choose to ignore that, that is because the case is your case. It's not my case, right? But then again, in certain degrees, if the person said, I don't want anything, and it was a celebrity, and they had $50 million, and they have royalties, and the person said, I don't want anything. I just want to. I'd say, well, I'm not representing you. I'm just not because then I have to question A, your judgment. B, I'm going to be the one that's on that paper that said you waived $50 million. It's not worth my effort to be involved in that. But I mean, that would be an outlier.
yeah, because then another attorney can come back and say, whoa, you're out of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that attorney that made you sign that?
That's right, yes.
That waiver that you're given.
Yeah, that's an extreme example.
Right.
I've never seen that happen. But yes, people do, because people, to some degree, it's smart, right? Because there's a cost of litigation that you can't quantify. It's stressful. Every time you get an email from the lawyer, or you have to be dragged into court, and there's this acrimony, and some people don't have the constitution for that, and it wears you out mentally. And so I think there's a value in that. That's what we say that during settlement. I look at clients in the eyes and I say, I can't quantify the value of being done. So if you're arguing over something that's worth $5,000, yeah, I mean, look, $5,000 is $5,000.
Right.
But you're there. You're at the finish line, and you have to put that into the equation, in the calculus, as to we're close to being done. Like there's an old saying some lawyers have. I never leave a penny on the table, right, for my client, and that's a good way to start out. But you also have to, as the attorney, be reasonable too, because if you're not leaving anything on the table, then you're not, or if that's your theory, you're not weighing the risk and the cost benefit. It depends on what's on the table, right? If there's 50,000 on the table, that's different than if there's 2,000 on the table. So you have to factor that in, and you have to factor in the mental health of your client, the emotional strain on them. And some people, what I get a lot is people want to remarry. So, you know, we talked last time about infidelity being one of the number one reasons for the divorce. Well, somewhere along the line, that infidelity blossomed into another relationship, and there's pressure on that end to finalize the divorce and get it done so that relationship can move on to the next level.
Do you think sometimes when they agree to like almost nothing, that there's a little agreement on the side where that spouse is like, if you just agree, I'll give you X amount?
Well,
Just agree to this so it doesn't drag on any longer, but I'm going to give you.
I hope not. And I'll tell you why. Because I tell clients you can't make side agreements. And one of the questions that we do as attorneys, and we call it, you know, a colloquy, or judges would call it a colloquy, but at the time of the uncontested, once we're all done, we have the agreement is settled, and we go in to get the actual divorce. One of the questions is, this is the agreement, right? Yes. And you've signed the agreement and you're voluntary? Yes. Now, is it fair to say that there are no side agreements between you and the other party? That's correct. There are no side agreements. And nobody coerced you, you weren't under duress, et cetera. You know, so I tell clients, no, you can't make a side agreement with somebody. Now, do they do it and not tell the attorneys?
Sure.
I'm
sure everybody does what they want after. Have you ever had anybody where they finally just, you know, threw their hands up and said, you know what, mentally I'm strained, you know, financially I'm done, just get it over with?
Yes.
And call it a day?
Yes, and that's a difficult part of this business, because I don't like to abandon clients. And sometimes the other side does drag it out, or like they fire their attorney and then they become pro se, and then they're like, it's a wild card because they're not paying for their fees. So the more this goes on, the more my client is paying, and then sometimes they get to that point, and you have to have a difficult conversation with them, because while
That sounds like really spiteful.
Well,
right?
while I don't bill for a lot of things like phone call, like I bill for, we were talking about this. I try to be very fair with the billing, right? So there are lawyers that bill for every phone call, every email. I try not to do that, right? But I have to bill for my appearances. I have to bill for
it's your time.
my time. But, you know, especially when you're spending substantial time on substantive issues, right? And so every time there's a court appearance, I have to be there, right? You can't pick or choose. I have to be there. So this costs that litigant money every time, and then you have to have a difficult conversation with them. Maybe you need to finish this off on your own. I had that happen one time with a fella from, you know, the neighborhood, very nice guy, has referred me clients. I brought him in, and I said, you're almost better off without an attorney. He said, but he was scared. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, because this is just going to keep going on, and your bill is going to keep blossoming, and there's no end in sight, and it's going to hurt you in the long run. And the judge had already seen the optics on it, that the wife was very difficult. The wife had been yelled at a number of times, admonished by the judge. So I said, you're almost better off just going on it on your own and going to mediation. And, you know, and that's what he did.
Get it done.
I saved them thousands of dollars by doing that. But yes, people do throw their hands up at some point.
What if you have,
no
okay, so a couple's married, their both names are on the mortgage. They're getting divorced, they own a home together, and you have to now stop paying your husband, or the husband or the wife went into all this debt with either their business or personally, and now they can't afford the house, they're getting divorced, so they have to stop mortgage payments to go into a short sale. Now, if it's because of the other spouse and now your credit is shot because you're not paying your mortgage, and now you can't find a rental, or you can't find another house to buy because of that, can you, like, get money from the other spouse, even though technically I guess they don't have any money, but can you try to file something against them where they have to pay for your...
Well, you've created a very fatal scenario, I've had those cases. But now you have a situation where nobody has any money. So then
Right.
the next discussion is, bankruptcy. And of course they have to do that jointly. And sometimes
The one wants to do it, the other one doesn't.
the other
wanna
one
do
doesn't
it.
want to do it. But look, anytime somebody damages your credit, so if you have just somebody who is being insidious and they're trying to mess with you and they're refusing to pay the bills and things like that, you can calculate, that value and the loss of credit, and then file an order to show cause to seek to freeze their bank accounts or to transfer the monies to us, to make somebody the solely responsible for paying the bills, so to speak. There are things you can do in that regard.
Yeah, because now you have to sell your house, but you also have to find somewhere else to live, but you can't find somewhere else to live because now your credit's...
Credit shot.
Your
Shot.
credit's
Yeah.
shot. Well, it happens
All your
too.
money's
I will
gone.
say this: what happens also is if you have a spouse that hasn't worked for 20 years, that's also difficult. And what happens is they want to go out and they may have the money for the house sells. They have the money for the down payment and everything, but they can't. They're not mortgage. Their credit isn't.
Yeah, you can't get a
because
mortgage.
they haven't had income for a while. But there are lenders out there that specialize in divorce, and usually after about 6 months of receiving consistent alimony, if there's an alimony award or a settlement, and let's say it's a $60,000 a year in alimony, and that person makes $30,000, they're technically making 90. Well, they're making more than that because the 60,000 is non-taxable.
Tax. And the
So
30 is,
the
yeah.
30 is but on 30 they're not going to get the mortgage. But if they establish this income stream from the alimony, there are lenders out there that specialize in divorce persons.
Now that you mentioned that, I had someone where he was going for a mortgage. He was getting divorced. He was still in the house with the wife, and he's going to go buy another house and move out. And the mortgage company actually wanted to see what alimony he was given
Yes.
and everything else. And he goes, well, it's not settled yet. And the mortgage company says, look, I can't do anything until your ex actually signs off and says, okay, I'm only receiving X amount, so now we're deducting from there and everything else.
Well,
But-
one of the real estate and divorce, that's the
Mm-hmm.
idea of these podcasts. So you wouldn't bring in every expert, right? You wouldn't bring in an forensic accountant, but one guest that you might consider is one of these folks who actually specialize in divorce lending for real
Right,
estate.
Yeah, I have someone that's going to come on.
that would be a
with
great
that. Yep. Yep.
informational piece for the.
No, we're definitely going to do that too. Now, I have another question. Jimmy asked, can I deduct my divorce attorney fees as a revenge tax write-off? I love these questions here.
So no, you cannot.
He's like, that was the most simple answer I think he gave us.
You
Nope.
can't write it off? Unbelievable. Now, say an attorney all of a sudden, big divorce case or whatever, and as an attorney, you made $40,000 or $50,000. You can't write that off.
What do you mean?
No,
Is that-
I'm saying as a divorcee, right?
Yes.
Paid an attorney $40,000 to go through and have a divorce. Now, when it's time to do his taxes, he can't write that $40,000 off.
No, I know some accountants can be creative with certain legal
Things.
fees, but strictly for the divorce, no.
No,
It's not tax deductible.
it's not worth getting a divorce then. You can't even deduct the attorney fees here.
Well, no, I disagree with
I'm
you.
out.
I disagree with you. No, listen, I had a client the other day. It was an attorney who had contacted me about 2 months ago, and what I do is I follow up with people. So he said he wanted to hire me, and et cetera, et cetera. But then he was going to hold off. So 2 months goes by. I put it on a tickler for 60 days, and I call him up and I say, I'm just following up with you. If you went in a different direction, it's fine, but I don't like to let anybody slip through the cracks. If you're waiting for a call, I do a follow-up with everybody. He goes, you know what, Al? He goes, if it ever happens, I'm going to hire you. He said, but we decide to try to work on it. My immediate response was, that's great. Congratulations. So I don't want to see people
Yeah.
get divorced.
Yeah.
But I will say, when I made that joke is for some people, it's an absolute necessary you have to do it in some cases. I mean, people who are being mentally abused or
absolutely.
or just in a very toxic
Yeah.
environment.
Relationship.
And life is not meant to be lived that way.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right, let's see what Joe asks here. Joe, can I legally, I love these questions. Can I legally change my middle name to Free at Last after divorce? Come on, Joe.
I think Joe can do that.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. You can
While
change
some
it.
of these questions are designed to be funny, right?
Yeah.
They do touch on certain topics, and you can change your name to Free at Last.
Oh, John asks, can I get a divorce MVP trophy if I prove my case exceptionally well?
If
All right, no more
John
questions from
if-
your
no,
computer.
if
No
John
more
was to
questions.
hire if John were to hire me, I will personally go to Little Falls Trophy and get him an MVP award.
Oh, all right, here, last one from one of these guys. Robert asked, is there a divorce Olympics event for who gets the most stuff? These people are out of their minds.
I said
That's
stop
it.
asking those questions.
No more questions.
Whoever jumps through the most
All right.
hoops.
Now, we're going to talk about prenups.
Prenuptial agreements.
Okay.
I have a couple right now, as a matter of fact.
Nina had a couple questions about prenups, and then we're going to guess the prenup from celebrities here, okay? Go ahead.
So is there anything, I know everything has to be laid out, with what, if they do this, then they don't get this. Is there anything that like trumps everything? Is there any way that you can void a prenup?
Oh yes. So
Okay.
I guess you have a prenup.
No.
So the planning and preparation and drafting of a prenup is very important, right? So it can make it very simple. It's not one particular item, but one particular item there is crucial, which is disclosure. Okay, so in a prenuptial agreement, you have to give full disclosure as to both parties do the assets, what exists, bank accounts, brokerage accounts, timeshares, because what you're calling it is you're listing it as separate property, and then you define it as separate property is defined as what's going to be in this agreement, which is going to be kept separate. And then you can also have, so if you acquire property during the marriage though, so that's after the prenup and it's during the marriage, that would not be covered by the prenup or as separate property, but you can put language into the prenuptial agreement that says,
Right, like say any money I make from such and such a venture I had before you, and in the future from that particular company or whatever, you don't get.
right,
right?
because
You
it
put
would
that
be a
something like that
derivative
in
of
there.
the separate property. But again, if you're using that money to fund the marital enterprise, it will be considered income, at least for alimony purposes. But the income stream from it, if you're putting money and reinvesting it into the business or a business or other businesses that are derivatives of the business, which is separate property, it's not hereinafter acquired property. It's still part of the separate property. So you have to. And I ask clients, what do you envision? And a lot of times they do have a vision. They know that they're going to sell this unit and purchase another unit. So in the agreement, it can't just be, 1313 Mockingbird Lane. It's because that might not exist at some point, and then it's something else. And so you put language in there that explains that this is separate property, and any property, if this property is sold to purchase another property, that too shall become separate property. But the initial drafting of it has to have full disclosure. It's guided under what's called the UPAA, the Uniform Prenuptial Agreement Act, which came from really three cases, which was a case called Marshall, which was the disclosure case, another case called Orgler, which were all New Jersey cases, and DeLorean. So if you remember, you've seen Back to the Future, John DeLorean.
I like that car.
The DeLorean, yes.
Yeah.
What about recording somebody? So if you're recording somebody's conversation to prove your case, can you?
You have to be careful, because now your podcast goes out to people. We were talking about this. People have seen it in other places, so it wouldn't be. And I'm being cognizant of that. So it depends on the state.
Okay.
In New Jersey, it's called.
Yeah, we're only talking about Jersey.
One-
Everybody,
one-
we're only talking about New Jersey.
One person.
Not Italy. Italy.
One
Not
person.
Italy,
One
or-
person. One person consent. And then, like, so in Pennsylvania, it's 2-person consent. So it's they have each state has their own wiretapping laws. And
But one person consent means
if I call
if
you
me
today
and
on the phone
Vito-
and you could tape record it, yes.
and not tell you.
You could only tape You could tape record the conversations that you're having directly with the other person, without
I
their
think that's
their
weird.
Without
But
their
you
knowledge?
I
cannot.
think that's so weird.
Yes, but you cannot tape record as an eavesdropper. So
Right.
there was-
So
if-
someone else's conversation.
So if you
can't
tap
sit there and
if you
record.
tap the phone in your house, and you were tape recording conversations between your spouse and another person, you couldn't do that either.
But
you
if
can-
I'm sitting there, if we're having an argument, right, and I'm sitting there and I just hit record because I'm like, you know what, I just want to keep this on file, and
happens all the time.
I think that's weird that you don't have. I always thought you had to let the other person know that they were being recorded.
See, Phil, be careful out there.
You know what? And look, people do abuse that, and they do it for the wrong reasons. They set people up and things
Right,
like
right.
that. And look, I mean, if you walked around tape recording your conversations all day long, you'd be surprised even at what we say, right? I mean,
Right.
You know,
don't-
it's, and I've
sometimes
heard,
you'll be like, I don't remember.
I hear some things on these tape recordings, and I always take a step back and I say, okay, the person's having a bad moment. But sometimes there'll be like questions, like almost like we're doing here. You're prompting questions so that we have the dialogue, and they'll do that to sort of incite the riot. Okay, but the you have to look at both sides of the coin. There are a lot of people out there that recording saves them in terms of they're being abused, and to
Yeah.
prove it,
Right,
or
that's true, too. Somebody can use-
it's for their own protection, or conversely there are accusations made that are false, and to protect against that, a recording can help. I had a case years ago. A woman was the guy had like a GoPro, but every time at pickup and drop off there was she was starting a fight. On this one particular occasion, he pulled in and she was hitting him, scratching him. He was trying to get the baby out of the car seat. And she actually calls the police on the phone, says on the phone to the police, he's hitting me, he's beating me. They show up. He doesn't engage with the police. He just very nicely, they ask him what happened. And he had the video of him. And on the video, he's saying, please stop hitting me.
Wow.
And she was wailing on him. And that went to a domestic violence case, and he showed the video, and it was dismissed.
Okay.
So in that particular instance, so it can be helpful.
Yeah. I just thought it was what Phil's actually one that told me. He's like, no, as long as one person knows, it's okay. I'm like, that can't be right.
Yeah, that's what I didn't
like
think
that.
so either.
I thought
because,
the other person had to know you were
right,
being recorded.
right. It's like I'm just recording with whoever,
One person consent or two-party consent, or one-party consent. That's the term that is used to describe
Yeah.
the
But
different.
if I was sitting here and you guys were talking and I hit record,
You can't.
I can't bring that to
right,
court, right?
because it's the two of us talking, and you're
and
not
I'm just
involved.
pretending like I'm not listening.
Yeah, I see you do that. all the time.
Well, I don't want to overstep, but conceivably, because she's part of the conversation.
Oh, okay, she can.
She could.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
Shut your phone off,
Right.
please.
Which is why, so now we're doing everything, a lot of things by Zoom. Judges will have you pick up the laptop and scan the room, and it'll say on there that you're prohibited from recording. It'll, when we go to mediations, for instance, we make certain that nobody's recording
Nobody's
the
recording,
interaction,
yeah.
because mediation is supposed to be confidential. Anything that's is like Las Vegas. Anything
Yeah.
that's said there stays there.
No, speaking.
That's
It
a
just
new. A
came-
mediation is just like Vegas.
Vegas. No, speaking about Zoom and everything, I had to do Zoom court.
when you went
Not
to-
court, it was jury duty. So they make you do Zoom, you're on jury duty, same thing, nobody else is supposed to be there, it's supposed to be just you, whatever, and you're on there, you gotta make sure you mute to listen up. So I'm listening, and they do roll call, Vito Contuzzi here, whatever. So somebody else, they asked so-and-so, you hear, she goes, yeah, I mean, she's in her bed.
I knew you were going to say that.
No, but she's in her bed just hanging out, with the computer on. I guess it was her husband or whatever. And right all of a sudden you hear, what the F you still doing in bed? Get your out of, and everybody's listening, and all of a sudden you hear the court person, can you please mute? Can you please only show yourself? But people just, it's just
Shameless.
crazy. It's shameless,
Hey, she showed up for court.
Yeah, but the husband, I guess didn't want her to go to court. Wanted to go.
That was happening all the time with Zoom, like with COVID, when the kids were in the classrooms and the parents walking behind and
it happened to
yelling
me.
and saying stuff.
It happened to me with my son. I didn't know he was on Zoom. I come home, I'm in my walk or whatever, and I walk right behind him. Hey, what? And all of a sudden, Dad, I'm on Zoom. I'm like, oh boy, I had to go run away.
I was actually, believe it or not, served on a state grand jury. I thought, well, I'm a lawyer, and I actually made some pitches to them. That, like, I don't know that, because it was state grand jury for criminal cases, and my firm has a white collar crime department. I said, I don't know that. Can you at least give me an idea what the cases are going to be? They selected me.
No way.
Which was,
you would think they would have been like, all right, goodbye.
Yes, and it's in Trenton. And it's 1 day a week for like 6 months. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm running a business. I can't. But it was by Zoom.
No.
And they and they worked with me, because then they did have some in-person ones, but they only called me for the Zoom ones. So in some respect, there's, that's beneficial to people, right? It's because it's convenient. It takes, people who have child care issues.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But then every now and then you get the person who decides to lay in bed in their pajamas.
I like jury
Yeah.
duty.
Yeah,
I don't know. I like going there, and then when I'm dismissed, I get to walk around Morristown.
Yeah, I go to
Go to lunch.
I go to Newark. It's
Have a
whole
drink,
It's a
go
whole different
shopping.
story.
And then my days, I
I've
feel
been
like I
called
did my job.
I feel like I'm one of the. I feel like I'm called for jury duty every year.
if I-
Me too. Phil's always like, again? But sometimes I call and then they don't ask you to go, so then you get put back in.
I went to jury duty one time, and I don't even want to get into that.
But Essex
That'll
is-
be a different conversation.
Essex County's nice now though, because they put on the new parking edition, so
Yes,
it's
yes.
very convenient
to park and go in,
Yeah.
and go in and out. It's just there's so many.
Yeah, I get to go to
people,
Morristown, so that's nice.
So many
nice day
people
for
in
me.
Essex.
That's where my office is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, I'm in Morristown once a week. I gotta
Yeah,
stop
Headquarters
by.
Plaza, 1 Speedwell Avenue.
No, really. Oh, okay. I
And
gotta
But
come,
you're
come see
where?
it.
You're
My home office in Fairfield.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, so we're gonna do guess the prenup. I want to see if you guys notice. I knew it, so that's why I put it up here, just in case you guys are wondering. When blank and blank got married in 2000, she was totally in love but was concerned that he had cheated on his first wife repeatedly, including with his wife's best friend. Therefore, in the case divorce, she will get $1.5 million for every year of marriage. She had asked for almost $5 million a year, but accepted a lower figure in exchange for a lump sum of cash up front and a $5 million straying fee if he cheats on her. In return, he also got a confidentiality clause from her, barring her from ever revealing personal details
Angelina
of
Jolie
their
and Brad Pitt?
marriage. Negative.
The
It's a Hollywood couple.
It's a Hollywood
So is
couple.
Angelina Jolie and Brad
Yeah,
Pitt?
no, but
Okay.
it's a Hollywood couple. It wasn't them. That might be on the next one, but I'm not going to say for sure.
Well, so if it's a
That
Hollywood.
was a long,
well, 'cause-
like,
no, but there was
scenario.
a,
I
Yeah,
almost
it's
fell
a-
asleep during it.
the Trump prenup had a very extensive confidentiality clause in it. So when you
Yeah,
said
it was-
confidentiality clause, it's what.
It wasn't Trump. It was Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
No way.
Yeah, this Hollywood power couple reportedly had a prenuptial agreement that entitled Catherine Zeta-Jones to a significant settlement in the event of a divorce.
So that's why she's still with him.
No, they're divorced now.
They're
I
divorced?
I believe so. Yeah, real estate they sold, okay? Built in 1895, Casa Zeta Country Estate in the Guard Hill area of Bedford, Connecticut has 8 bedrooms and 18 bathrooms. The home has been totally renovated. An outdoor pool, tennis courts, everything. Riding trails, local trails.
All right, I'm
20
out.
and
Too
a
much
half
information.
$20 and a half million.
You got to get that listing.
That's a lot. That's the listing I want. That's the listing I want. All right, here.
Where is that listing again?
In
Where is that house?
Connecticut.
But isn't
I
that
would drive.
that's a hard
You
listing
have
to
to
sell?
get your
Yeah.
license there then.
Yeah, I know. This is another celebrity, Hollywood. It could be a music, anything, okay? And this is a good one. Almost all the details of the split were kept confidential, but reports say she stands to get a big payoff from the divorce because there was no prenuptial agreement. It was ruled that she's entitled to half of everything the actor earned during their 3-decade-long marriage.
Oh,
According to Entertainment Tonight, his fortune was once estimated by Los Angeles Business Journal to be worth approximately, $850 million.
Kevin Costner?
so Anina, it's an actor. We got
It's an
that.
Right.
30-year marriage.
Oh, all right. Take back Kevin Costner.
No, Kevin Costner.
I don't think he's been married 30 years.
Kevin Costner just went through.
Yes, that's why I'm thinking of that.
Yeah.
I know the answer. Oh, because it's on here. But
30-year
Actor,
marriage.
30-year marriage.
So he's an
It's not
old.
Kevin
So it's an
Bacon.
older
They're not
actor.
giving-
got-
I feel like
it's
they
an
were
older
married at least
actor.
30 years, but
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon and what's her name? But I don't think they're getting divorced.
It's an older
it's an
actor
older actor, at least
because he's 30 years, right?
Uh-huh.
Still relevant to this day.
Yeah, and here I'll even go one up. Okay, if you guys know where I'm from in Italy, okay. He did a movie there many years ago, right near my hometown in Matera. I'm from Mondescaglioso in Italy. He did a movie there in Matera, Italy.
I don't know.
Guys, give up.
Can you give us another hint?
That's the only hint I really got. He did some very funny, comedy movies.
Is
1,
he
2,
handsome?
and 3.
Is he like?
I'm a guy. Is he handsome? No, he's good. Yeah, he's good looking too.
A handsome guy that did comedy movies,
He did a couple comedy movies also.
action movies.
Was he good at them?
Yeah,
though?
comedy
'Cause I feel
and
like the
comedy
handsome guys that
action.
do the
Yeah,
comedy,
yeah.
those flop.
No,
Was it a
no,
good
it
movie?
it was funny. He did. I think it was. He had a couple of them.
But
1,
wait,
2, and 3.
They didn't have a prenup.
No
Or-
prenup.
They didn't have a prenup.
No.
I think I know who it is.
I have no clue. So go ahead.
Lethal Weapon.
There you go. He was in Lethal Weapon.
I didn't see any of those
You
movies.
see? Oh, that because you're only a 20-year-old.
So
Yeah,
the
you
answer
gotta
to
be-
this question
I forgot.
is not Glover. It's Gibson.
Gibson. Mel Gibson and Robin Moore.
Mel
After the-
Gibson has a new movie, doesn't he?
Yeah,
He's
he's
been
got a
married
new
for
movie coming
30
out
years?
now. Yeah.
What is that
Who's
movie?
his wife? I don't even know if I know who his wife is.
Robin Moore.
Yeah, he's been married a long time. That's why when he said action movies, I gave it to me. But he has a new movie coming out now.
Yeah.
And he
yeah.
just started another movie with Mark Wahlberg,
There you go.
where he was the priest. Mark Wahlberg was the priest. It was
See?
got highly acclaimed.
No. After their long marriage, the divorce between Mel Gibson and Robin Moore resulted in one of the biggest divorce settlements in Hollywood history. The details of their prenuptial agreement were kept private, but it was a high-profile case. They didn't even have a prenup, but look at that, huh? No, $850 million. I can't.
No, I don't even recognize
Yeah, but-
count that high.
But some of his
Yeah.
his movies were some of the highest grossing
First
movies
yeah.
ever.
Lethal Weapon 1, 2,
2,
3,
3.
probably 4 and 5.
Well, he had the Lethal Weapon series. He had
Passion of the Christ, filmed in Matera.
yes,
see,
that was
in Italy.
that's why when you that hint actually helped
Yeah.
when you said action, and I
There
was
you go.
trying to but then he had the Mad Max movies when he
Mad
started
Max,
off,
that's right.
which are like
Yeah.
a cult
Is that his new girlfriend?
following.
I don't know. Could be.
And then he had a Braveheart, which
Yes,
was
Braveheart.
Oh,
was big.
Braveheart.
Which was a
that was
blockbuster.
that was your time frame. Well, there you go. See, we learned something new today. This is a good one, all right? Supposedly signed a prenup that grants her $10 million if they divorce before 2 years and an additional $1 million for every year of marriage up to 15 years, reports Business Insider. The agreement also details that blank receives $5 million for each child they have currently. The couple has 3. The nuances of their union are evident, but it makes sense considering they have a collective net worth of more than $1 billion, according to Forbes.
It's a celebrity?
It's a celebrity. Now, you got $1 billion. Both of you have all that money. Why would you even want a prenup? Why would you even get married?
Oh, they
I'm
both have money.
They both have money.
I'm like, I'm out. It's too much.
You're out?
No, wait.
I lost
No,
you.
let him.
I lost you.
Gates.
You lost me.
Yeah. That would have been a good one. Yeah, it's a good guess.
Well, because they both had money, and Bezos.
Yep. Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Oh, Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Oh.
While the
okay.
details
That makes
of their
sense.
prenuptial agreement remain private, it's widely believed that they have a solid financial agreement given their immense combined wealth and successful careers.
You have to give us
But-
categories.
But
You have to give us musicians, actors, because this is.
let me say this
It's
though.
too hard.
Let me say this though about this. This is very insightful or instructional. We put this stuff in agreements. You can set up sort of like a liquidated damages type of thing that okay, after so many years I'm entitled to X, after so many more years. I have an agreement sitting on my desk right now with that language in it that is, if the parties are married for more than 5 years, this shall be the agreed upon equitable distribution. If the parents or parties are married longer than 10 years, this is the number.
Do you
So
ever get people-
what you're hearing here is stuff that we actually put in agreements.
Do you ever get people that want a prenup that have nothing?
Yes.
Right? Right? Because they are going to hopefully make something. And
Yes,
then they
I mean,
do
it's
like
not-
a more future, or
it's-
maybe their families have money.
Well,
and-
you can't do it in sort of in this amorphous, wishful. Like I hope I have
like
something.
if I make
But no,
$8 million
normally
next year, you get
people
nothing.
You get
people
nothing.
don't have a lot, but they are working on something that may actually develop into something. So if somebody has,
So,
Like, and it
so
was their
people-
idea before they were getting married, and they had partners.
I had
and
a fellow who was
So
working
people can
on
do
an
that?
he was working on
Really?
he was working on an app, like a phone app.
Right, right.
He was a computer fella. He was a IT guy and everything, but he was working on coding and developing this app, and it was in the developmental stages. He had pitched it to some folks, and so it may turn out to be nothing. In fact, I don't even know if it ever did turn into anything. But he wanted a prenup that would cover that he would have full ownership, and it would be considered to be separately his property, and she'd have no rights to it.
See, me, I find it where if they're already coming to you for a prenup, they're already thinking divorce.
Oh, see?
No,
That's my interpretation.
yeah,
You know
it's
what
a
I
fair
mean?
interpretation,
Yeah,
but
I think a lot of it has to do with like people behind the scenes too. Like if they're successful, they have maybe managers, or their bosses, or their family, or telling them,
yes,
Don't do it.
"No, I
All
don't
of
want
the-
to jinx you," but
all of the above, and
Right.
the sort of the old Boy Scout rule, right? Which is, hope for the best and plan for the worst. Always be prepared, right? And then you have family members who are saying that they are. I've had a lot of family. I had one was a postnuptial, and it really was much ado about nothing. But the woman hired me and said, "My dad won't come to the wedding unless I get this done." Or I'm sorry, he wouldn't come to the wedding unless I had the prenup.
Yeah.
She didn't get the prenup. He got it, and then he wanted a postnup done. And she's like, "I'm just going to do it because he won't speak to me," because he wanted her to have this postnup. But postnups are a whole other.
I was just gonna say, postnups, isn't that basically like your will?
No, it's sort of like you're creating an agreement after the fact, in the event that we do get divorced. But it's called a postnup because you're already married. But that's a whole
okay.
other area of law that you'd have to go spend a whole segment on, because No, there's certain criteria.
Tequila and post-nups.
Yeah.
Next podcast.
Because no, the post-nups are, if you don't meet the certain criteria, they are typically going to be invalidated.
Wow.
There's case law on post-nups. They're
Yeah,
treated differently than.
Hold on, post-nups.
Here's what I will tell you about here. So on that topic.
No, let's.
So think about this. There's a case that actually said, I think Marshall might actually, that's the case that I mentioned before, might actually have this language in there. But the judges, so a marital settlement agreement at the end of the divorce is a contract, right? It's an agreement. A prenuptial agreement at the beginning, before the marriage, is a contract. But very intuitively, the court in one of the cases said, but think about the negotiation, the formation of both of these contracts. We have to look at them differently. Why? Because at the end, the parties are acrimonious. They are skeptical of one another. They are cynical, distrusting. In the beginning, they're in love. They're trusting. So you have to look at the prenup with much more scrutiny because they weren't, right? And so that is why prenups have a lot of criteria. Was it reviewed by an attorney? Did you have enough time to deliberate over it? I had one time where the woman was 8 months pregnant. She was handed the prenup on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving at like 5 o'clock. The wedding was the Friday after Thanksgiving. It was already planned, band, flowers, venue.
Oh, I don't like that. I feel like that's sneaky.
Well, but it's coercion. Or it's at least
you need to have
it's
another
duress.
attorney look it over.
So on a couple different topics, she couldn't get an attorney because it was 6 o'clock at night on
Right.
the day before Thanksgiving, and then the wedding was the next morning, right after Thanksgiving. Couldn't get an attorney to look at it on Thanksgiving. So A, she didn't have an attorney review it. B, because of the timing and also because of her situation, she was 9 months pregnant. This thing had been planned. There was money put into it. And the timing of it, right? She didn't really have any time to deliberate. It's almost like, that was the argument. It was duress. And so prenups have a lot of criteria. Was it reviewed by an attorney? Was there enough time for you to negotiate it or deliberate over it, or where you weren't pressured? And did you have full, fair, and complete disclosure of the assets and what you were giving up? So prenups are looked at with a higher. So this started the conversation. You said, "Is there a way? Can prenup be invalidated?" It certainly can, and they're often challenged.
Did they get married?
The couple Thanksgiving. You got to
No.
Finish your story.
Oh, I'm sorry. They got married. What I did was I tried the case at the divorce.
They got divorced too. It was a prenup.
No, it was a case within a case.
How long were they married before they got divorced?
Oh, like 25 years. And so I represented the wife, and we filed for the divorce, but we filed to set aside the prenuptial agreement. And so we had to have a trial on the prenuptial agreement itself, a mini trial.
Because she signed it in duress.
Yes.
I like attorneys.
So I had once I had the agreement set aside, then it was a regular run-of-the-mill divorce. In other words, the prenup did not control the outcome of the distribution of assets and so forth. And he had a business. They had a number of different assets that would have been excluded.
See, the way I forgot the question I asked, and I was more invested on did they get
married?
Yes,
because it was Thanksgiving.
They did. That was the point of it.
Right.
That's how I ended up with her, because she had already signed the prenup. It was years later they got divorced. She came and hired me to handle the divorce. She said, the prenup.
Yeah,
I said, well, when did you sign that? I started to put together the facts. I'm like, because I looked at the date.
3:30 a.m.
Because I get one of the questions I asked, what's the date of marriage? So she tells me the date of marriage. And she had actually given this to me and didn't say anything about it. She had sent me, brought in the prenup. And I'm going through it and I'm looking at it. And she had already left. And I had to call her up, actually, because I'm looking at it and I said, what's the date of this? And then I looked at, like, that particular year. And I think it was like 1989 or something like that. I don't know what it was. But in that particular year, you could Google any date you want. It'll tell you, or what was Thanksgiving in 1988?
Right.
Or when was, when was Thanksgiving in 1984? You could what's the date? And I'm like, wow, this was Thanksgiving was the next day. And wait a second, she got married 2 days later, or a day later. So I called her up. I said, am I reading this right? She goes, yeah. I said, oh, we have to have a whole different discussion now.
It was like on the Godfather quote, either your signature or your brains on that piece of paper. So I guess she decided her signature, but 25 years it worked out because you were able to figure, all that out and investigate it and
The husband
do
was
all that.
very, very mad.
Oh,
Very,
I'm
very
sure he
angry.
was.
Well, you know what? That's what you get.
That's what you get. You were
That
conniving.
was done very calculated, I feel
He
like.
was conniving, and I agree with you 100% there, Nina.
Thank you.
Sometimes I disagree, but
a lot of times you.
this time I do agree.
You always have to keep an original on
Yeah.
prenups. That's one of the that can be a snafu later on in the enforcement of it if you don't have the original with the original signatures. Yeah.
All right, so we have to do post-nups and tequila next time.
There you go. But see how much we learn, Al. I
Yeah.
really thank you. We learn a lot with this. And everybody out there, this is why you need realtors like us. We know what we're doing. We know what we're talking about.
Now we do. No.
Now we always did. But now
just kidding.
We're educated a little bit
A
more.
little bit more on the other side.
And
we
I
were
know
always good with the selling and the housing side.
there you
now
go.
We're like,
Now
there's a
we
lot more
know-
into it that we didn't know.
There you go. Now we know a couple of bigger words that we can use, and down the road. I
We may
really
not
want
use
to
them in
thank
the right
Al.
context, but-
But I might
I
throw
hope
that
I
word
am. I
out
hope
there.
I'm using them more.
We don't know. So
And when
We're good.
somebody asks me, what does that mean? Let me call Al. Hold on. Let me put Al on speaker here. But I'll tell you, I really enjoy this
Yeah, me
because
too.
you know what? I think it's very informative. I've run into a lot of people, and Nina, you do the same thing. Al, you said a lot
All
of
the
people
time.
came up to you. It's pretty informative. We're out there as realtors, as an attorney to help everybody, and answer questions and help you the best way that we can. And I really love doing real estate, and
Yeah.
I'm glad.
each case is different, so
Each-
it doesn't
right.
everything doesn't apply to everybody. But
There you go. And I really enjoy this, Nina, and you
Me too.
enjoy, besides with the podcast, but also doing the real estate. I mean, that's what I love doing. I wake up every morning. I can't wait to go to work. I can't wait to help people out. And, there's a lot of realtors out there that always say, hey, it's just about making that commission, getting
Nope.
the deal done, and
no, and that's
all
why
that.
we get so upset. We get so
Right.
upset
You
sometimes
got
when things
upset
don't
the other
work out
day. Right.
because you want everything you want everything your client wants, and when you can't do that for them, I get upset. I get like
And I experience the same thing.
right.
Yeah,
Don't you
yeah.
feel like if you can't do it for them,
And
then
these podcasts are cathartic too, because as you say, you love what you do. There are times where you get frustrated
Yeah.
as a divorce attorney, and then I come here and you ask questions, we talk about it,
and you know it's helping other people.
and I do, and I think to myself, wow, I've developed a body of work. This is what I do, and if you can't deny it. This is who I am. This is my vocation, right? I
Right.
know what I'm, and so then you realize that, and that's because of years of passion and doing it. and
Right.
so forth.
It's you
right.
you
Every
care
question we
about
asked
it.
Al, you had different sides to it because you've experienced it all.
The biggest thing, and it's the same with, and I get the questions about real estate, with houses being sold from my clients. Everything I could say this about almost every client I've had. Man, woman, older, younger, they're afraid of what they don't know, and so these kind of discussions,
Yes, people don't want to ask the questions.
they're embarrassed to ask the
Yes.
question. They're afraid they don't
Right.
know who to ask it to,
Yep, yep.
and sometimes it's very simple stuff.
Yeah, I get people all the time. Hey, I have a stupid question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Tell me, ask me. I'll answer it for you. I had somebody the other day, and I told you this yesterday, where she put on social media, I'm looking for an agent up in northern Passaic County, and a couple people recommended me or whatever, and she wasn't really happy with the agent she had now selling her home, so she wanted somebody else to have her buy a home. Kept that agent because they're under contract or whatever. And she calls me up and she goes, Vito, I got to say one thing. She goes, few people recommended you. And What I did was I Googled your name, and as soon as I Googled your name, I saw you and Nina on the podcast, and you were talking about one of these FHA mortgages or whatever, and she calls her husband over. The husband goes, "We're using them to buy our house. They know what they're doing." She goes, "One of your reels actually, made sense because we had the issue, and guess what? You actually answered it for us by just
in like a 29-second
second
clip, yeah.
in a 29-second reel." So what I want to tell everybody out there is, if you need an agent, interview a couple of agents.
Yes,
Don't
always
just
interview agents.
always interview them. Don't just go out there and say, "Hey, I'm going to take that guy," or whatever. Interview them, see what they know, see what they've done in the past, or how they can help you in your situation. Every situation's different.
And I would say, that, I think people can gather from the podcast. I know it. That's why I'm here. There's a lot of people that know what they're doing, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of divorce attorneys that know what they're doing. There's a lot of real estate agents that know what they're doing. But there's few, I shouldn't say few, but there's finding the ones that care.
Yes.
Right. That's
right?
the big thing.
And I think
Yep.
what comes across, I mean, I know this to be true from both of you historically, not with the podcast, but I think with the podcast, I think some people will gather that these aren't two people who are just real estate people. They actually care what happens. They work with you. They see things. They're creative, and so that's what you're looking for.
And that's why it's hard to understand when you do reach out to other people that are in the same business. You're trying to do the best for your clients, and you're not even getting an answer from these people.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to say, "Hey, we put in an application. I know you said it's going to take a little time, a few days. It's been 5 days. If you need any other information, please let us know." And you get nothing.
And people don't realize the
It's-
strange things that happen that realtors help them with. That everybody thinks, well, you just show my house, right? You do a couple open houses, it sells itself.
and
Yeah,
that's
no.
it.
But there is behind the scenes things that I know. So, for instance, my house, as you know, all the houses in Fairfield, strike that, not all the houses. A large number of houses in Fairfield have a basement kitchen. The Italian people, upstairs kitchen, and the
Summer
basement kitchen.
Some are full
Summer.
kitchen.
And so you're going through it, and the township has me do a certification
That you're not going to.
that I'm not going to rent it out, and
Right.
and then I have to get with the cert of occupancy and everything. I have to certify to the town that it's not for rental purposes and it's going to be a one family. And the realtors. So if you don't, you're like, what is this? But realtors can help with that.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, Al, because I've had appraisers call me in Fairfield. Well, I just went into this house and it has, a kitchen upstairs and it has a kitchen on the ground level. This is a multifamily. It's only zoned for one family. And I'll be like, hold on a second, pal.
Pump the brakes.
Relax. You can go to the town. I'll let you know right now
Who the person
who
is.
the person
who to
is in the
contact.
town where you can go.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed another kitchen on ground level. And you know what? It's a single family. If you're having, a party downstairs, you use the kitchen downstairs. If you're upstairs, you use the kitchen upstairs.
Right, you're having a barbecue, you just want to
right.
use
You just go
downstairs,
down there. And even in the basements, people have kitchens in the basement. You know what? You don't want to use your house to have 30, 40 people over. You go in the basement and, you cook down there. But a lot of, like you said,
That's
a
what we
lot
do.
of realtors
Mine's,
don't know.
I said base. Mine's not a base. It's a
Right, yours
it's a
is a
second,
ground level.
Ground
right.
level, but it's to your point. Because ground level, you come out the back and you're in my backyard, the patio area.
Right.
And when we have things, we're using that as a service kitchen.
So you don't have to go up.
You
and
don't have to
down
go up a
and-
flight of stairs.
The
And
older
everything.
people don't go,
Right, right.
or then we lay stuff out in the dining room upstairs,
yep.
and then some people will go up there and
Right,
maybe
right.
put the desserts up there and the main
Food,
course
of
is
course,
downstairs. Sure.
yeah.
And another misconception too with realtors is they just if someone's going to sell their home, they'll call the company that's in the town, which is great. But a lot of those people that are in that office don't live in the town.
Yep.
Like my office isn't in East Hanover, but I've lived in East Hanover for 45 years. I know that town inside and out. I have kids there. I know everything about it. Houses that come on the market, I go see them if they're not mine, and You got to just do your people.
That is, in my business, that is a big misconception.
Yeah.
You hit on it, because I
Doesn't-
always get people that say, well, if I recommend a realtor from, say, Fairfield, but the house is being sold in Morris Plains, well,
They don't know
shouldn't
the
we
area.
They don't know the area. No, that's not true at all.
Yeah. It's a huge
and,
misconception.
And you have to
Right.
explain to people. And by the way, you want a good realtor. Now, look, you're going to get a realtor from New York, Long Island, or Connecticut to list your house in Morris Plains? Probably not. But we're talking about North Jersey. I mean,
Right.
everything's within that same geographic region. Same thing happens with attorneys. The people think, like I have practiced or have been in cases in almost every county in the state, exception of Warren, Gloucester, maybe Atlantic. I might have even had a case in Atlantic. But people think that, a lot of my cases, believe it or not, are at this point in time, for some
Bergen
reason,
County.
in Bergen County, and it ebbs and flows. A lot of times in my dock it'll be Essex County or Morris County. My office is in Morris County, but yet right now I have more cases in Bergen County than I do in.
Yeah,
so
like I
people, you gotta open your mind. You gotta
Right, I
find.
was selling a house in Morris County, and the agent was from Bergen County, right? He's like, "Do you have an attorney that my client can use because we're in Hackensack, not Lincoln Park?" I'm like, "You do know? How do you not know?"
They
that
have
the
cars, don't they?
attorneys
They have cars. You can use an
You can use
attorney.
whatever attorney.
And
you're
now everything is
comfortable
done.
with.
They don't even.
everything, yeah.
Especially real estate attorneys, they don't even want.
Right,
If
that's
you
not-
show, when I bought my house, I showed up at the. They're like, well, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?
So-
I'm old school. I want
Yeah,
give me
yeah,
the
yeah.
keys. I'll sign the.
Documents or whatever. Yeah.
But a lot of times they send everything electronically. You sign it.
Yeah,
You
Right, but
everything.
send
he
it
didn't know.
back.
So he was his realtor, and he didn't realize that the attorney didn't have to be from Morris County.
County. It could be any county. But that's what everybody doesn't realize that. But you do need somebody that cares for you, that'll take care of all your real estate needs and really go to bat for you.
I do have a real estate attorney in Bergen County, though. I have him. So if you ever need that, call me and let me know. I can recommend
Okay.
attorneys who just deal with real estate,
Right.
residential real estate
Right.
closings,
Yeah, and everybody
and I
today.
have them in every county.
I ran into somebody yesterday, okay, and we're talking. She goes, "Yeah, my son got that house, and we're supposed to close so and so. It was a bank foreclosure." And she's going on and on and on. She goes, "Yeah, he's going to close hopefully in whatever. Hopefully the title comes back good." So I said, "Okay, great. It should come back good. If the bank foreclosed properly or whatever." I go, "What does your attorney think?" "Oh, the realtor said we didn't need an attorney." We're in the state of New Jersey, you don't need an attorney, but the realtor said the title company will do it.
But you would never suggest.
I go, "Are you out of your mind?"
Well, all right. So for the viewer out there, right, I'll go old school here, and you'll remember that the old Raritan Bridge scenario. In anything, I learned this years because I used to do real estate, residential real estate when I was younger. And so, I did it with the old
Oh.
in and out statement. I was taught to do it that way by one of my mentors with a pencil. In and out statement. We did the HUD statements, the RESPAs, and at the time we called them HUD statements. We did
Right,
that in
right.
pencil so you could erase it. But I sold a condo down in Wildwood. I represented the sell. He lived up in Bloomfield, and he had this condo down in Wildwood. So he's selling it. I'm like, okay. So I'm getting the inspector. I write my attorney review letter to the other attorney, and it was somewhat nasty or whatever. This better be done or else kind of thing. And so the closing's down in Ocean City. I figured, what a good day this will be. I take my wife, we go down to Ocean City for the closing. I show up at the title agent, and they come out with a charcuterie board, coffee, juices, drinks. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, where's the other
Attorney.
Oh, nobody ever shows up for these things. And I'm like, wow. And I realized anything past the Raritan Bridge back then they did real estate differently down there.
Yeah.
Up here,
Oh, that's funny.
up
Yeah.
here, the attorneys are nitpicking over everything. The lock on the bedroom door was
That's
broke.
so
We want
funny.
$1,000 concession.
Yeah. Everybody's crazy.
We would ask for concessions for everything.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, we had
we-
someone that limited the inspection to major stuff, and then they're like, "There's a hole in the door, so
I want a new
I want a
door."
new door, and I want a licensed professional to put the new door."
put the new door up.
But I remember going down there saying, "Boy, this is nice though. The way they do business down here, everything's." Everybody's smiling and happy. Up there, we're all like,
Everyone's in a rush.
time is of the essence.
Yeah.
This is
No
not
one has
here.
any time to do anything.
Nobody's got no time.
We would always send time of the essence letters.
Well, I think this was a
I hope so.
This was
Yeah.
a good one. I want everybody out there to see this Vino with Vito. We're gonna put the corks as we open up.
Wait, is that the first cork for this?
The first cork for this one.
Oh,
here. Look at that.
wow.
Al's
Look
Cater's
how it
cork in
landed.
here. And
That's good luck, I think.
want everybody to know this is my
That is good luck.
daughter.
It's perfect.
My daughter Victoria that gave me this and said, "Please, Dad, put it on your show." My other daughter.
So Ralphie's
gave the
next.
wine.
Ralphie, you have to
Wine
send
glasses. So Ralphie's next. Let's see what Ralphie.
We got to make sure our producer Chris gets this in the gets this in the.
Gets that. Look how I did that, Chris. But thanks again.
Yes,
Al.
thank you
I
so much
really
for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you, guys.
very gracious to both of you
And
for having me.
the wine is done. And on that note, one day, and that day will come when you need to hire a real estate agent. And when that day does come, you will call the godfather of Northern New Jersey real estate to buy or sell your house. And if he's not available,
I'm available.
The godmother,
the godmother's here.
The goddaughter.
goddaughter.
The goddaughter.